Fox News contributor, former Speaker of the House, and author of a brand new book. It's coming out soon, June 5th, actually. It's called Trump's America. Newt, would you ever get in a driverless car?
Oh, sure. In fact, I went out 2 years ago with my team, and we rode around in Google's driverless car, and it was fascinating.
Did you survive?
You know, the statistics. Well, look, statistically, they're safer than drivers. I mean, if you're out late at night and your choice coming out of the bar is your cousin who's had 5 drinks too many,
good point,
or a driverless car, take the driverless car.
Good point.
It's safer.
What about a skateboard? You know, I mean, you don't necessarily. Those are the only 2 choices.
All right, Mr. Speaker, let's talk about last night at the rally in Nashville. The president was saying that our country is now respected again because of the high-stakes negotiations with North Korea. How do you feel?
Well, I think, first of all, we are really gaining momentum, and the report by the Atlanta Fed Reserve that we might be at 4.1% economic growth this quarter. That kind, when you look at the problems in Europe and in Japan and elsewhere, having America back with job creation, having us back with exploration in space, having us rebuilding our military, all those things give us muscle in the international arena. And I think the firm toughness, actually, I thought Secretary of State Pompeo's speech about Iran was equally aimed at North Korea. It's a very tough speech and says to the Iranians, here are the bad things that can happen to you if you don't fall in line. Well, in a sense, if you're Kim Jong-un and you're looking at that speech, you're thinking, oh, yeah, and that could apply to me, too. So I think the president so far has basically done a pretty good job. Look, it's a zigzag. The North Koreans for years lied to everybody, got a deal, took the money, and then broke their word. Now they're up against the president who's saying, look, we're going to keep all the sanctions on until we can verify that you're doing the things that need to be done. And they've been so tough, frankly, the South Koreans are begging the North Koreans to cut a deal because the South Koreans are very worried about the danger of a real war, which would be terrible for South Korea. And so they're actually, I think, drawing Kim Jong-un. You'll notice he went for a surprise summit meeting over the weekend with the president of South Korea, sent back the word, oh, yeah, I really do want to meet. Sorry you felt bad about it. And they have teams now working in Singapore. They apparently have a team meeting in New York. But again, this could take years to finish up. It's not going to be a magic moment where they get together, Kim Jong-un decides to give up all of his nuclear weapons in return for a visit to Mar-a-Lago or a promise by Trump to open up 3 golf courses. I mean, these guys are tough. They've spent 3 generations going through terrible circumstances to try to build these weapons, and it's going to be pretty tough getting them to give them up.
So this is so if June 12th happens, it's only going to be the start. They're not going to walk out with a deal. And I think that's always been the mindset, should be the mindset going in, correct?
That's right. The mindset ought to be we keep every sanction on, and we might even start toughening them unless they're being reasonable. And we measure reasonable. Reagan used to say, an old Russian proverb, trust but verify. These guys have such a terrible record. I think the phrase is mistrust and verify, 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 because you just have to assume that their track record is such they're going to try to get out of doing anything real.
No, you're right. Well, the president pursuing that overseas, but he's been under siege here at home, as you know, and as you often do, you've dissected what he's facing in the Mueller probe. You say it's not one scandal, it's actually 5 scandals. Dissect that for us, will you?
Yeah, I actually wrote a piece, a newsletter, both for Gingrich Productions, and we posted it at foxnews.com, saying that the challenge you've got is you originally have the Clinton scandals going all the way back to cattle futures in 1978 when she made $98,000 on a $1,000 investment, which is clearly just called fraud. But the Clintons have had scandals their whole career. Then you have the scandal of the establishment, the deep state, covering up for the Clintons. offering immunity to, imagine, this guy bleach bits the computer so they give him immunity. They don't charge either of her top staff people. I mean, look at how they treat the Trump people. Look at how they treated the Hillary Clinton people. Then third, you have the scandal of a totally false, and we're now learning, very long Obama administration effort to destroy Trump through a variety of investigations. And I'm convinced it goes up to Valerie Jarrett and to President Obama. You couldn't have had this scale of activity on that front. Then fourth, you have the scandal of the FBI itself breaking down. We now have had the top guy resign. We've had the number 2 guy resign. Both of them may well face criminal charges. You've had several other top people had to resign or retire. All of that ties back into the Justice Department and the Obama White House. And then finally, you're beginning to see some people like General Clapper kind of melt down, because I think there were a number of folks who thought they could go ahead and do whatever they wanted to because Hillary would cover it up. And it's gradually sinking in that, in fact, they might be vulnerable. And I look both at the former CIA director and the former director of National Intelligence as 2 of the good examples of people who really went over the line, assuming they'd be protected, and now they could be faced with serious charges in their own right.
And both guys who are known to have to verify intelligence and come out with very learned opinions have said, well, I think that Putin has compromised Trump, and Clapper thinks that Russia threw the election. I'm just saying that, but I'm not, even though the evidence doesn't point to that, totally irresponsible. They're acting like guilty people. Newt, thanks so much. I cannot wait for your book.
Well, look, I have to tell you, the breaking point for me was the interview Clapper did where he said he hated to use the word spy. And I thought to myself, this guy was the director of national intelligence.
I know, right?
He was theoretically in charge of all of our spies. I mean, that would be like having a guy as a barkeeper who doesn't like alcohol and refuses to serve it. I mean, it just tells you how screwed up these guys are getting as they face a world they never expected to have happen.
They didn't. They thought Hillary was going to win.
Right. Thanks, Newt.
Thank you.
Let's bring in Utah Republican Senator Mike Lee. He is the author of Written Out of History, The Forgotten Founders Who Fought Big Government. Senator Lee is also on the Judiciary Committee, so right spot on for this topic of conversation. Great to see you.
Good to be here.
Yeah, great to have you in studio today. Let's talk about whether the president is right in your estimation that Jeff Sessions should unrecuse himself. Not really sure if that's a word, but we'll go there.
Well, look, I don't think either the president or Jeff Sessions saw what was coming. I don't think either one of them necessarily could have predicted what had happened. Jeff Sessions had to make the decision at the time he made it. I don't know whether he made the right decision or not. I think reasonable minds can disagree on that conclusion. I do understand, like Trey Gowdy said, why the president might be frustrated. It's not ideal for him.
What role can or should Jeff Sessions play as Attorney General right now? What does the recusal mean for some of the things that you would want to happen in an investigation right now?
As long as he's recused, once he recuses himself, unless or until such time as he unrecuses himself, he can't touch it. He's not the Attorney General. No, he's not the Attorney General for that issue. And it falls on the next in line, which is Rod Rosenstein. Now, if he were to reverse that, that changes. But until that happens, unless or until that happens, it's Rod Rosenstein and it's not Jeff Sessions.
What do you make of the president back in what the New York Times is reporting, March of 2017, pressuring him to reverse that recusal?
Well, perhaps he looked at it with White House counsel Don McGahn, as some are suggesting, and said he didn't need to do it. If that's what they were doing, saying recusal seems unnecessary, then that would explain why they went to him and tried to encourage him to undo it. Apparently, Attorney General Sessions wasn't comfortable with that.
Senator Lee, what would you want Sessions to have the power to do exactly right now?
Well, nothing, because he's not the Attorney General for this issue. He's recused,
right.
so he's out.
If he had not recused himself, what would you be looking for?
If he were back in, if he
be?
unrecused himself today, it would be the same that I would hope that Rod Rosenstein, as acting Attorney General on this issue, would do, which is to encourage Mueller to wrap it up. I mean, the guy's had a year. Let's wrap it up. Finish your investigation, finish whatever report you're going to produce, but get it done. This doesn't need to drag on for 4 years.
And the fact that Rod Rosenstein hasn't done that. I mean, how much can the president get involved to put pressure on this?
Well, typically, presidents don't get involved in a decision like this a lot, but ultimately, these people all work for the president. And
they read his Twitter, no doubt. They see it.
Yes, and it's by design. Yeah, they're put in place by a president. They're put in place by that president with Senate confirmation, and they serve at the pleasure of the president. And so this is, within the executive branch of government, the president's the boss.
The Inspector General could testify before the Senate Judiciary next week, and you're anticipating, you and I were talking off camera, that we could even have some sort of report from the IG. What will you talk with him about?
Well, it depends on what the IG report says. We do expect that within the next few days. We don't know exactly when.
So you want to talk to him after that's out?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to review the report and talk to him.
Okay. And for right now, there have been, you know, at least some words thrown out that this will be explosive, that the IG has had an opportunity to look at things that others haven't seen.
I don't know. We can't know that until we hear from him, until we see his report. But I do know this. The mere suggestion that there's been involvement by the FBI in a political campaign, if true, that's very deeply disturbing, and it's understandable why a lot of people would be concerned about that.
All right, so Democrats and others have pushed back and said, no, this is how you do it, and that there was nothing untoward to having an FBI informant looking into a campaign, and you say what?
Well, if that's the case, why didn't they go to the campaign? Why didn't they go to President Trump as a candidate and say, here's what we're doing? That is a
Why do you
question
think they didn't?
I don't know. And it's one of the questions I want to get to the bottom of is why didn't they do that? And if they didn't do that, does that tell us anything about what their intentions were?
Have you talked to Democrats at all about this issue?
Not much. This issue has gained a lot more momentum in the last few days, and I haven't had a lot of discussion.
The reason I ask you is, wouldn't it be an American problem if we have FBI informants looking into campaigns? It wouldn't be the first time, but I'm just curious, on the Hill, do you have that kind of gestalt view on it?
Yeah, look, I think Democrats, if it comes out that they were deeply involved in a campaign, that they were engaged in some type of partisan manipulation of a political campaign, I think that's an issue that would be concerning to both Republicans and Democrats alike.
And what kind of accountability comes after that?
Well, it depends on what they did. But if there was something nefarious going on, if there was an intent to disrupt a campaign or affect the outcome of it, that's huge. That's monumental. That's catastrophic. And that's something that would need to be addressed through legislation and through oversight.
Senator Lee, great to have you today.
Good to be here.
Thank you for your time.